Hey everyone, we're at the EK Suite now at CES 2019, and we're going to start with the really high-end stuff. I promise there's more affordable things we'll be talking about in this video and more practical things too. But just because it's interesting, we're starting at the high end with the Velocity WS block for the X599 chipset motherboard, and this is the Asus Dominus. We talked about it earlier in the week. There's also a completely insane VRM on this motherboard, which we also talked about previously, and accompanying that, EK is doing a VRM block. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Deepcool Captain 240 Pro AIO cooler. The Captain 240 Pro uses a bladder within the water tank to expand and contract based upon liquid temperature as a leak prevention mechanism. This works by burping air at higher temperatures, making for a unique closed-loop liquid cooler design. The Captain 240 Pro also expands upon the existing Captain series by extending tube length for more flexible positioning and updating the LEDs. Learn more at the link in the description below. There's actually no name for the block right now. This is still pretty early staging for it, but these boards and the CPUs are supposed to ship in the next, well, we'll see. They should ship soon because they're here. But they'll be shipping soon. So the blocks come a bit after that. The block here is the Velocity WS, and there's actually a slightly changed, there's a jet plate for it now as opposed to the previous 3647 socket block. So this socket is not new. We actually talked about this. We have some B-roll of the jet plate, but we talked about this socket at Computex, I think, when we were doing the initial 28-core Intel coverage, where we sort of surmised that, yes, this will be a 3647 repurposed Xeon, which it is. And so that's what we see here. I mean, it's fortunately a reused socket from Intel, so some of the parts can be, in terms of the ILM spacing, are going to be the same. It's a narrow ILM, and then changes are really the jet plate and the cold plate's a bit different, as you can see in some of our B-roll. So really high-end. Don't have pricing. The CPU block will be over $200. I don't know what the VRM block will cost, and I don't know exactly when they're coming out. But if you're one of the, I don't know, 1% of people or fewer buying the 3175X, I guess there are water cooling options. Maybe more interesting to you is I'm hoping to get some of these to use for our overclocking so that we can continue to kill Jay and make sure he's buried in the ground. So that's really why I care about these. But moving on to something a bit more practical is the Valkyrie series AIO. And this is something we talked about at Computex as well, but it was more prototype at the time. And Computex was about June last year. So it is not an Asetek design. It should sort of bypass the Asetek patent concerns. We talked about this with Deepcools as well, where it's a bit of a challenge because Asetek has successfully sued companies in the U.S. They've forced companies out of the U.S. for having functionally a pump in the block. That's ultimately what the patent revolves around, because the design of a pump itself is not inherently new. But this should sidestep that. So the Velocity, or the Valkyrie, excuse me, is EK's approach to trying to aggressively attack the market of CLCs, or closed liquid coolers. Some of you call them AIOs. EK hasn't typically really offered these. They've had the Phoenix line, things like that in the past, but this is a proper AIO or CLC. And the only thing here that's you might see out of place is there is a fill port. So kind of useful there, but otherwise there's no real gimmicks here. It's an aluminum radiator, pretty standard. It's a copper cold plate, and then the pump is visible through that acrylic housing on the top, so you can see the impeller there. And don't know exactly the details on who's making it. It's not Dynatron or Appaltech to my knowledge, but I don't know who's making who the OEM is. So this should be priced probably competitively with Corsair, from what I understand, but it's not final yet. But if you've been waiting for EK to make a CLC, then it looks like they're finally doing it. This is the follow-up from Computex previously, and it's got RGB in it, I guess, if that's your thing. Moving on. So this is something you saw in our Lian Li coverage. And one Mr. Der Bauer informed us that perhaps if there's enough demand for this distro plate that EK makes, EK would bring it to a wider market. Well, this exact one might not be going there, but EK does have plans to bring distro plates similar to this to some of the top cases on the market. So you should have an option in the future to buy a distro plate. This is really, we'll have shots of it from the inside where you can see it's mostly helpful for sort of detangling your tubes. You can send them all to one plate, and you don't have this big mess of tubes going from one component to the next. It just all goes to the plate instead. Plus, it looks nice. So, yeah, They're not cheap to make, so they won't be cheap to buy. But if you've been wanting something for somewhat function, somewhat looks on the open loop side of things, then hopefully soon the top cases on the market should have compatible plates like this from EK. But we'll follow up on that. As far as we know, the O11 should get one. The new O11 coming out, the XL, should maybe get one. And then some of the in-win cases will be getting one, but we don't know the rest. Let's move on to the next thing. So for this one, revival of the Supremacy series, EK has been moving towards their Quantum series and phasing down the Supremacy series blocks. But there's a Supremacy Classic hopefully coming out. Well, it's right here. It should be coming out soon. Looking at about a 20% lower price. I think it's already available or priced online in some places on the EK website. So it's about 20% lower in price. For some of them, like the CPU block, it's about $70 or $80 instead of $100 for the Quantum. So price down, it's the Supremacy line. Nothing's really changed. So if you like the Supremacy line, you don't need the flair of the Quantum line. That's kind of what EK is targeting, just keeping the cost down, and otherwise no major changes to this one. So just wanted to point that out for people who have liked the original EK blocks, the classic approach. That's what they're working on. And one more thing I want to show off is just cool. It's a case. It's somewhat modded, but we're just going to show it off because it's one of the best built machines we've seen at the show so far. So this last one, this is just a case mod, and this is done by JR23. He's a modder, works for EK these days. It's an in-win case, but it's been pretty heavily modified. So you have this insert here along the inner lining and gives you the nice reflective look, which is accented by a light box on the top of the case. So it looks pretty cool. I'll walk through some of the specs for you. Massive radiator in the front on the left and on the right. So we have shots of that. But huge radiator here, huge radiator on the other side. There's a distro plate on the back of the motherboard's mounted to it. And then you have the new link here between the 20 series RTX cards, which should be coming up soon, if not already, from EK. If you've been looking for one of those to bridge two cards, they are working on them, which we could have used recently for our Titan RTXs that we did to once again kill and bury J. It's been a big goal of mine the past couple of months. So yeah, it's just a cool mod. It looks good. We wanted to show it off. Not something you're going to be buying probably, but wanted to point out one of the better build systems at CES 2019. That'll cover us for now. For the EK suite, as always, subscribe for more. You can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly, or store.gamersnexus.net. And of course, let us all know what you thought of EK's showings, and we'll try and get some of them in to review in the future. I'll see you all next time.